Welcome back to A View to a Grill. I'm Johnny. Today I have this giant Porterhouse from Snake River Farms, and let me tell you what, this steak is one that almost kicked my butt. We're going to start off with a dry brine the day before our cook. First, let's take a look at what we're working with. This is a 45.4 ounce Snake River Farms Wagyu Porterhouse steak. Let's get it out of the bag, and you can immediately see how much marbling and how beautiful this steak is. If you would like some of these Snake River Farms products for yourself, check out my link and discount code in the description. Just so you know, this is the first Wagyu steak that I've ever grilled. It's also the largest steak that I've ever grilled. Once we have it out of the package, we can use some paper towels to pat the steak dry on both sides. Now that our steak is dry, I'm just going to use kosher salt, and we're going to apply this salt liberally to both sides. And when I was done, I had a salted steak that looks like this. Now we'll get our Snake River Farms Wagyu Porterhouse in the refrigerator overnight. It's the next day, and now let's set up our Weber kettle. The first thing we're going to want to do is clean our grill grates. I'll just get that sprayed on, let it sit for a minute, and then scrub off all the grime and then wipe up all that mess. Now I can get the grill grates off. In my slow and sear, I still have some leftover charcoal from my last cook. We'll clean that off by either moving it back and forth like this, or you can pick up the entire slow and sear and just shake out any small pieces of coal and loose ash. Once you've shaken it out for a bit, you'll have some good reusable charcoal. And then to keep our air flowing nicely, we'll just make sure we remove the debris at the bottom of the kettle. Now we can get our grill grate back in, wipe up any loose ash that may have gotten onto the sides of the kettle, and then open the grill grate door so that it can be ready to receive our lit charcoal. Now that our Weber kettle is set up, we can go ahead and make our rub. I'll start off by putting about 2 tablespoons of kosher salt in a bowl. Next, I'll use my Man Kitchen pepper cannon to grind up about 2 tablespoons of freshly ground pepper. Next, I'll put in about a half a teaspoon of smoked paprika, and then I'll just tap in some of that chipotle chili powder. Next, I'll add about a teaspoon of Mexican oregano, and then I'll give all of this a stir. And when I was done, I had some rub that looked like this. And now that we have our rub made, we can go ahead and light our fire starter. While our fire is getting started, let's take our Porterhouse out of the refrigerator and season it. Now let's take a look at what happened overnight. If you remember what the steak looked like yesterday when I salted it, it looked like this. But now today it looks like this. You can see that all the salt that was on the meat has dissolved and reabsorbed back into our steak, and the surface of the steak is nice and dry. Now the salt that got on the fat, well, that didn't dissolve or absorb in, but that is perfectly normal. Since the steak is dry, I'm going to want to spray a little oil on the surface just so that our rub will stick to the steak. Now I'll generously season the steak as if I haven't already salted it the day before. And when I was done, I had a well-seasoned steak that looked like this. Today, to monitor our cook, I'm going to be using the Meat Stick 4X. Remove the thermometer from the extender and set up our cook. First, I'll touch the beef pane. Next, I'll touch the steak. Next, I'll touch the doneness and then choose medium rare. Now the meat stick will set up the cook, and the meat stick then instructs us to plug in the thermometer to the steak. I'll just kind of measure it out to where I want it to be. In this shot, you can see that I have it plugged in all the way to the end where the dark portion begins. Then we'll get a warning about silent mode, and I'm okay with that. That's all there is to setting up the meat stick for this cooking session. Now we can see some ash on the top coals. That is my sign that tells me that the coals are ready to use. I'll get those coals poured into the slow and sear and then I'll move them around for even heat distribution. One thing I want you to notice is that I did not fill up my slow and sear like I typically do, because I'm trying to mitigate the flare up that's going to happen because of all of that internal marbling in the porterhouse steak. Now I can get the grate door closed, and then I'll close the lid to my Weber kettle. Next, I'll make sure that the top vent is wide open and the bottom vent is wide open as well. Now it's 5 minutes later and it's time to get the porterhouse on. Today for this cook, I'll be using the Lamson Premier set of 20-inch tongs. If you'd like a set of these tongs made in the USA, check out the link below. Later on in this cook, you're going to see exactly why you need a set of long tongs. In this shot, you can see that our rub has adhered to the steak, which is going to give us a nice crust. It is now 11:10. We're just going to open the lid, and now let's get this porterhouse on the indirect side of the grill. Now let's get the lid closed. We're going to make sure that our top vent is still open and that the bottom vent is still open as well. And just look at the thermometer. Once we got that lid closed, the temperature is starting to rise very quickly. It's been about 10 minutes and our internal temperature is registering 60 degrees. And then at 11:26, we're at 72 degrees. And at this point, I decided to rotate the steak. And then we hit our 80-degree range. And since I'm going for medium rare, I'm gonna go ahead and start the searing process. We'll get the lid open and just let the fire build up a little bit. There's one thing I want you to notice. While the lid was open, our steak went from 81 degrees to 88 degrees in 4 minutes. So that's going to help us determine when we take our steak off to allow for carryover temperature. And honestly, that is one thing I love about the meat stick. It's because you never have to remove it. And before, you would have had to probe your steak to know what the beginning temperature was when you open your lid to when you're actually going to start to sear. But with the meat stick, you don't remove the thermometer, it stays in, and you can monitor this, and it actually becomes a great tool to help you figure out what your carryover temperature is going to be. Let's get that steak on. And initially, I really like what I see. I like the fact that these flames are hitting the bottom of the steak. Now, 1 minute and 20 seconds in, the flare up is a lot more than what I'm used to. You see me here just kind of pushing the steak over a little bit. What I'm doing is I'm hoping that the flare up will hit the steak in a different spot and we don't scorch the steak. Now I'll take a quick look at the steak, and so far so good. I am not mad at that color. We'll just go another 60 seconds and then I'll take another quick peek at the steak. Here's what the belly cam captured. It captured a lot of flame and a pretty good looking steak. I'll get the steak back down. We're gonna go to an intuitive 33 seconds and then we'll go ahead and flip the steak. Now check out this sear on the porterhouse. I really do like the color we've been able to accomplish so far. Now, when I put the steak back on, I want you to notice that I have the end of the probe on the outside of the slow and sear just to try to keep it cool. I'll let that go, and this time it only took about 56 seconds for me really to get worried about the steak. This is why you need long tongs. The Lamson 20-inch Premier set of tongs are long enough to keep your hands safely away. So these flames just got to be too much. So I moved the porterhouse off the flame, and I'm giving the chance for that fat that's rendering onto the coals to burn off. And I also decided to brush away some of the fat that was still on the grill grates. At this point, I decided to get the porterhouse back over the direct heat, but I probably should have waited another minute or two. That's a good thing about having this on film, is I can actually see my mistakes as I make them. Now at this time, I'm giving it another minute and 30 seconds, and I decided to remove the porterhouse from the direct side of the grill to the indirect side of the grill. And check it out. I think this steak is absolutely beautiful right now. It is now 11:42 and our internal temperature is at 111 degrees. Now remember earlier when our steak was not so hot, we had 7 degrees of carryover. So I believe this steak is probably going to give me about 10 degrees of carryover. I'll just close the lid and monitor the temperature until it gets to 122 degrees. So at an internal temperature of 122 degrees, and that should get us past 130 degrees of internal temperature. And then at 147, 3 minutes later, we have crossed over that 130 degree mark. So we did good for what we thought our carryover temperature would be. And now I have to pose for Instagram, whereas if you don't already follow me on Instagram, go ahead and take a second and follow me on Instagram. Now it's time to cut into this steak. So let's get the meat stick out. And the first side I want to look at is this tenderloin side, because that really is the side I'm most worried about. In this shot, you can see that I clearly, on the edge, I got it to well done. Looking back on the film, it's because of this part of my grill right here. I let the flare up just get out of control right here on the edge. Moving toward the center, it looks perfectly fine. We hit our temperature perfectly. And then if I show you a little slice of it, you can see that this thing is just off the charts juicy. Now let's take a look at the strip side. We'll get that cut off. And you can see again right here at the edge, I did cause it to go well done for the exact same reason. Now let's take a little slice off and give this thing a taste. Just take a look at the color and juiciness of this Wagyu Porterhouse steak. Even though I did not sear it as well as I should have to have that nice even color all the way through, tasting this steak, it is still the best steak that I've ever grilled, even with those edge errors that I made. Now, if you haven't already subscribed to A View to a Grill, subscribe. Go ahead, do it right now. It's going to be one of the best experiences of your life. Well, maybe not. Thank you for watching A View to a Grill. I'll see you guys next time. Take care, y'all.